report out at 11 this morning. We're going to talk about that for a little bit. Lots of numbers today to look at. Starting old crop. Let's talk about old crop a little bit. USDA is still making a little bit of revisions to that. What stood out to you here?
Well, probably the bigger one was that, we knew that they had to increase exports for both corn and soybeans because our pace has been running ahead of USDA's projections. For corn, they did bump it about, 70 million bushels. So it was more than where USDA's pace is sitting at now. So with 3-4 weeks left in the marketing year, we've got a little room left to go. But it does look like we probably pushed the corn exports to what USDA is projecting. They fell a little bit short on it for soybeans, though. Soybean exports are about 25 million bushels ahead of pace. USDA only increased them by 10 million. That tells me we could be looking at some cancellations coming into play here for soybean sales. Overall, though, friendly numbers, stocks continue to decrease for both of them.
And this slide is where all the excitement was. I guess my first question is, where did USDA get these numbers? What sources were they using for yield in acres this time?
And that's probably the best question to ask here, right? Because that kind of gives you a basis of where why the numbers look like they do. As far as the yield, they took, the crop condition ratings reports as one of the determining factors. They took satellite imagery as one of the determining factors. And then they used, farmer surveys, or what, farmers felt that their yields could possibly be. So right now, none of this was done in field surveys. So that's where the yields came into play. On the acre side, it actually came from the FSA data that's been, for guys reporting their acres. So it seemed a little odd that we saw the corn acres jump by 2 million and soybeans decrease by 2 million. But I think there could be some play with prevent plant that's involved with that might make this, they might change these numbers moving forward.
And we talked a lot in the past how USDA is generally conservative with their numbers, especially on increasing yield. I've never seen a 7.8 bushel increase in 1 month. How about you?
I have not seen an increase that much. I remember a few years back, we saw them jumping about 4 or 5 bushels, and we thought that was big. And so this is kind of a shocker to see USDA not only increase the yield by 7 bushels, but then increase acres by 2 million, which in turn, we added 1 billion bushels of production onto the corn number here in this month. And that really is probably the highlight or the headline for this month's report.
Again, that was the big news today. Soybeans, though, yield did increase 1.1 bushels over the last month, but they did make a pretty big drop in acres, and no one was expecting that on that side. So that's why we had the lower production.
Yeah, and that's what came in and really helped support the soybeans, is the fact that we did see, the acres that we thought was in soybeans went to corn, and that increased corn and lowered the soybean, numbers. And that's was kind of the story for the whole day for the report, is that it was a little bit bearish on the corn side, painting a pretty big picture for production, where on the soybean side, it was a little bit less of a story.
Looking at some charts from these on the corn side again, we've seen of the major states, yield going up everywhere, acres going up, big increase in acres. That I assume would be an all-time record then too for acres where we are right now.
It's going to be close to an all-time record for acres. Yield definitely is an all-time record. If you go back, just look at the one, where the biggest increase came, and then that's one thing we tried to look at in the States. A lot of it came in some of the fringe areas, but Minnesota was one of the states that had the biggest increase for yield potential for this year, up 20 bushels over last year. And a lot of the fringe states saw the same kind of increases. So it'll be interesting if that holds as we go forward. But yeah, this is the first time now definitely in the last 3-4 years that we're actually seeing above trend line yields.
Okay, and then too, like you said, we look at the yield. This will be an all-time record yield for corn if this is realized, and then. And then by state, this is what we were talking before, a lot of states seeing all-time record yields here.
There's a lot of records that, like we mentioned there, Minnesota being one of them, Wisconsin, Iowa, well, South Dakota, North Dakota. Actually, there's not many states that are going to see lower yields for corn, other than, North Dakota and then some of the southern states. But overall, yeah, they're showing that it's been a good growing season so far as corn is concerned.
And I had my slides in the wrong order here, but we talked about record acres, record yield, and then we will have record production too, again, if we hit USDA's numbers here.
Yeah, and seeing a 16 for corn production, that's, there a long time ago, we were looking at 10 as being a big production number. Now, all of a sudden, we're looking at above 16. So, again, acres making a big jump, yield making a big jump, and that's really going to kind of build the stocks quite a bit to make them somewhat daunting for corn, if realized, like you said.
Looking at the soybean side, again, we're seeing yield go up in the major states, but acres going down. Again, acres dropping quite a bit from last year. And they're close, but we're not quite at an all-time yield on the soybean side.
And then looking at it, we're looking at above trend line yield. Now, of course, this number is going to be adjusted for the month of August, because August is one of the more important months for soybeans. So it'll be interesting to see how we finish, but definitely not seeing as big of an increase in the potential yield for soybeans as what we did see for corn.
And again, that's where we sit for yields compared to last year. A lot of states seeing increases, North Dakota not.
Almost enough to give North Dakota a little bit of a complex, as we're not seeing an increase as far as corn is concerned or soybeans, and one of the few states that are showing up in both.
And then looking at production, with that acre cut, even though we're having a record yield, we are not going to be seeing record production on soybeans this time.
And a lot of that being tied to the acres dropping as much as it did. I think we're close to that 80 million planted acres area. So seeing a huge drop from what we saw from last year even.
Moving on to wheat. Winter wheat numbers didn't change a whole lot. So did the spring wheat number surprise you, or are you expecting that big of a drop of 20 million bushels?
We were expecting a drop mainly because we had that disparity between what the wheat quality tour found when they were here and what USDA was estimating. There was about a 10 bushel change, difference between the wheat quality tour coming in at 49, USDA at 59 for their last report. So we knew that there would likely be a little bit of a decline in spring wheat acres. Yeah, this one, it was a pretty good cut that we saw here. And I won't be surprised if we see another cut next month, just because of the trouble that we're seeing as we're going into the harvest season right now.
Again, spring wheat, not looking too great. Lots of red on that chart. Lower acres, lower yield from last year. And again, going state by state, all the states seeing lower yield compared to last year.
And when you look at where the crop condition ratings are, Montana, Idaho, Washington, all having poor conditions being reported, single digits for a couple of the states even. So we are looking at, the Western regions having a really tough go of it for spring wheat production. And we're just starting our harvest season here as far as the North Dakota is concerned. And so far we have not seen, ideal harvesting conditions.
Moving into Durham, numbers look a little bit better here for North Dakota, at least. Arizona, California, not so much. And again, higher acres than last year, higher yield. And that looks a little bit better on the Durham side. A
little bit better. I mean, North Dakota looks like it's, faring a little bit better on Durham. Of course, Montana's seen an increase this year, which, that's where the acres are going to come. California and Arizona really did cut back quite a bit this year on their acres, and it's showing up in their production side.
Some of the minor crops here, we have barley, lower yield, lower acres compared to last year, yields a bit higher, same with dry edible beans. We got oats on this one. That is about it. Anything else you saw on the minor crop side?
Looking at sorghum, because that's a competitor, or with corn as far as the export market, we're seeing that production up a little bit as well. So that kind of follows hand in hand with corn production increasing. We're seeing the other feed grain, sorghum's doing the same thing.
And then after all that, that brings us to our new crop ending stocks. And here, the corn numbers start looking a little bit better because of the supply and demand changes here.
Well, most definitely. We did see a pretty big change as far as demand. I mean, everything was increased or to a degree for corn demand, which kind of helped chew through some of those extra bushels. But we're still looking at 187 million change, from what was expected, 457 above the previous month. So we are seeing a big increase in stocks for corn, and it makes it so that those corn stocks now are somewhat daunting, a little bit more comfortable. Now, I do think that this is the biggest number we're going to see for ending stocks for corn, and we'll see it get trimmed from here on out. For soybeans, if we can get some exports picked up, that number is going to see a little bit of a change as well. But for right now, soybean stocks are below expectations and below the previous month, which was a somewhat friendly. And wheat, the same thing. It was a friendly number, but the corn number just kind of overshadowed it.
National average price, soybeans left unchanged. They did see a drop last month, and we saw corn price going down 30 cents, not surprising with the numbers we saw today, wheat price going down 10 cents. And then looking at world production, world ending stocks, no one really, I think, paid much attention to these. We were so focused on the U.S. yield numbers. But again, big increase to corn. A lot of that, I assume, was coming from just the U.S. numbers.
Most of it was just because of the U.S. numbers, and all of the world ending stocks estimates were influenced mainly by the U.S. numbers here in the report today.
Yeah, like I said, soybeans and wheat, we saw a little bit of drop there. That's some good news there.
That's going to help support those markets, I think, going forward, is the fact that we are seeing a little reduction in the stocks. And as I mentioned, I think this will be the worst number for corn. Now we'll start looking at boots on the ground and actually see some in-field surveys take place for the September report. We've got the Pro Farmer tour coming up here in another week or 10 days. So we're going to actually now start to see a little bit more that is in-field surveys that happen. We'll get another FSA update on acres. So we'll see these numbers adjust as we move forward into the September and October report.
That's it for what we have today. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, please give us a call or send us an email or text. Thank you.